We've heard of animal rescue organizations where cats and dogs that have been abused or not cared for properly are somehow taken care of by organizations or individuals. But have you ever heard of one that takes care of reptiles, snakes, and lizards, and geckos, and others? The organization is called T.A.S.O.W., and they're right here in Slippery Rock. And Alexandros Petridis is the president and co-founder. Now, it's unusual for us to know of any organization that just deals with reptiles, but first of all, what does the name T.A.S.O.W. stand for?
Well, it stands for the Awesome Spirit of Wildlife, and we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization whose mission statement is to create a sustainable future for all living things, including my friend Jose here, through education, biodiversity preservation, and creating a culture of appreciation for the natural world.
Tell us about Jose. What is it?
Well, he is a red-tailed boa constrictor who's very interested right now in the microphone, and he is part of our organization's education team. So he is an ambassador for his kind. He goes to schools, day camps, other organizations' functions, and we do programs with him, and he helps us talk about the do's and don'ts of the reptile pet trade.
Alex, should I be concerned because that boa constrictor is coming toward my hand? Is that dangerous for me?
Well, right now he's just looking for a safe place to climb to, and he sees the microphone as being the next best place. He's very used to being around hundreds of people at any given time.
How big is this?
So, despite appearances, he is about 7 foot 5 inches. He weighs about 25 pounds, and we're estimating he's between 12 and 14 years old. Reason we estimate that is because when an animal comes into our organization as a rescue, it's difficult to tell sometimes exactly how old that animal is.
So you've had this boa constrictor quite some time. What condition was it in when you first received it, and how do you take care of it?
Well, Larry, he's part of our one of our greatest rescues. He's from a neglect and abuse case, actually. He was being kept in a very small enclosure in less than adequate conditions. Being a tropical reptile, they require what's called a relative high humidity in their environment, and they use that to help them secrete the right skin oils to shed their skin. So when we got him, he was having a lot of shedding issues, if you will. He was having trouble shedding his skin. He had a lot of skin issues. There was some retained shed, scab-like structures, lesions, etc. And so when he did his first full shed for us, he actually ended up taking off some of those scabs and some of that live skin, and he had open wounds we had to treat.
Alex, I'm curious. Why would anybody want a boa constrictor as a pet?
Well, there's actually a lucrative pet trade out there that involves reptiles. Reptiles have been growing in popularity over the years, and there's actually thousands of hobbyists out there that keep reptiles as pets in their own homes. Some people actually go through the trouble of setting up their own houses as pretty much personal zoos to house various exotic animals, including snakes.
Now, with dogs and cats, you can pet them. You can throw baseballs or softballs or tennis balls and they'll retrieve them. You can walk with them and talk with them. What does someone do with a boa as a pet?
Well, as a pet, they can be pretty rewarding too. I mean, as you can see, Jose is very used to being handled. He's very docile, and he is fun to take out and handle. I've been doing this for a number of years now. But unlike a cat or dog, they are an animal that commands a lot of respect because in some cases, maybe not Jose's, but there are species that can be what we consider dangerous that owners always have to watch out for. Just like any animal, they rely on natural instinct, and when it comes to feeding them or even taking care of them, there's certain things you have to watch for.
Or if they're dangerous, what kind of danger is that?
Well, the big thing is with feeding. Large constrictors like Jose here, who's obviously very interested in talking into the mic himself, they prey on warm-blooded animals like rats and mice. Now, as a rescue organization, we feed our large constrictors, or our carnivores, pre-killed rats and mice. It's just easier for us to purchase in bulk rats and mice frozen online. They show up at your door, and we can stock up on feed for our rescue animals for several months at a time. So when we go to feed him, we can't just give him a frozen ice cube. We have to not only thaw it out, but we have to warm it up to imitate the body temperature of what a living rat or mouse would be. And so we take a long pair of forceps or a pair of gloves, usually a combination of both, and we will wiggle that animal around in front of his face, and he will sense the body heat of that particular prey item, and he'll strike at it after he locks onto it, of course, and then he'll wrap around and constrict it. Now, where the danger comes into place is if I want to get through that process quickly and I'm not being a responsible owner, I may take my bare hands and try to feed him, which I don't do, and I don't recommend anybody does. And he could lock onto the heat signature of my hand by accident. And so when he strikes and bites, he's not intending to hurt me or lash out at me intentionally. He thinks he's going after the prey item. But as nature has trained their minds to work, he's not going to realize that that's what happened until he's finished his constriction process.
T.A.S.O.W started back in 2004. How did it start? Where did this all come about?
Well, we actually started as a small high school club. The founding members of the organization are all graduates from Slippery Rock High School. We started the organization as a club of like-minded individuals who were interested in reptiles, amphibians, conservation, and the outdoors. And we started off primarily as not a rescue organization, but as a film crew. We wanted to do documentaries on native species of reptiles and amphibians and talk to our fellow classmates at our school and at neighboring schools about them. Eventually, we ended up seeing a need for exotic animal rescue, and it transformed from there.
Now, in a high school, the young people in high school, the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, might be interested in pets. They had cats and dogs or horses, but wasn't it unusual for them to show an interest in reptiles?
Possibly, but then we are an unusual group of individuals. And we also recognize that just as much as we love cats and dogs, these animals too require attention and care. And as pets, it's responsibility of any pet owner to take care of their animals. And if that animal is not getting proper care, then it needs to go to somebody who can take care of it. So that's where we saw the need for rescuing these animals.
So in high school, you started out really as a documentary, a filmmaking group. Who did you show the finished product to?
We did them mostly for school projects. We were also intending to show them on YouTube channels, etc. But we started getting into the reptile rescue aspect of it as we did these programs with native species, and people started coming to us with their pets they couldn't take care of anymore and asking us if we would be able to rehome or rehouse certain exotic pets.
Tell us about some of the other pets other than the boa constrictor.
Okay, well, we actually have a couple of those animals with us today. Other than the boa constrictor, we rescue a variety of reptiles, everything from turtles, tortoises, lizards, other species of snake. We've actually even had parrots and exotic birds in our rescue before. Not often, but sometimes we do get things like tarantulas and millipedes, but that's not everybody's cup of tea.
There must be others besides just you doing this. Do you have other volunteers now?
Absolutely. We currently have about 17 active volunteers. Most of us are from the area. Most of us are either college graduates or in college here at SRU and other universities. We also have some volunteers in Pittsburgh and a small group starting in Morgantown, West Virginia.
So you have these animals, these reptiles, so many different kinds of reptiles. It takes food, it takes caring. Sometimes it may take a veterinarian to look into some of the situations. That costs money. Where do you get the money?
Well, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're mostly run through charitable donations. We can accept donations on our website or even through social media, but we also do donation drives. We do programs at schools, day camps, and other places where the hosting organization will actually donate to us to help us take care of our animals, to help us continue doing our education programs. We're also eligible for grants and funding in that direction as well.
Let's take a look at the care and feeding of a reptile. What are the do's and don'ts, do you think? Maybe some people out there that have reptiles, they have iguanas, they have lizards, they have snakes. What are the basic don'ts that you can advise them about?
Well, it really depends on species. The do's, I would say, would be doing your research on that particular species. The don'ts are just assuming what it needs for its care. For example, a lot of people get turtles and tortoises as pets, and a lot of people assume that you can just feed them iceberg or romaine lettuce, which, if, as you know, if you eat one thing your entire life, you're not getting your proper bodily nutrients, and that can affect your development. It also affects those animals' development. So realizing what the species itself or what the animal itself requires to nourish itself, but also to maintain itself, is essential when it comes to keeping any animal as a pet.
Well, you mentioned research. How can they research this? Where on the computer can they go to find out about the particular reptile pet that they're thinking about getting in their home?
Well, there are hundreds of places on the internet. One place in particular that I do recommend is reptilemagazine.com. Reptile Magazine is actually a very good source of information on how to care for your animals. There's other websites like anaspid.org. Our own website is starting to develop into something like that as well. We do offer information if people reach out to us on particular animal care. Like if you have a question about what the specific requirements are for keeping a tortoise or a chameleon, we can help you out with that too.
And what's your website?
It is www.T.A.S.O.W.org. That's T.A.S.O.W.org.
You're a small organization. You've been around since 2004. It's growing, I understand. You've got some connections down in West Virginia. If someone's interested in maybe volunteering or finding out more, they just go to their website, or can they contact you some other way?
They can contact us through the website. We do have the ability to sign up volunteers that way. We also do recruiting drives at our programs, and you can also find us through social media as well. We are on Facebook and Instagram. A lot of people get a hold of us through social media.
Alex, thanks very much. It's nice to meet you and learn about the organization. Nice to meet your friend here. And we want to talk some more about the beginnings of the organization. We'll do that in just a moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Josh McCracken is vice president of T.A.S.O.W. This is the exotic animal organization we've been talking about here. Now, Josh, how did you first get involved with the whole operation when you were in high school?
Well, Alex and I went to school together at Slippery Rock High School, and I always knew of the organization, but it wasn't until after high school that I became involved. Alex had contacted me and decided to volunteer.
As a high school student looking around and seeing other students doing unusual things such as dealing with reptiles, wasn't that kind of an odd thing to be happening at your high school?
I suppose so. There aren't too many kids that are into reptiles at our school. So it was definitely a unique opportunity to be involved with the awesome spirit of wildlife.
Well, knowing Alex most of your life then, you probably heard about his interests. What did you think about it then, that this friend of yours is so into reptiles?
I thought it was really cool. I thought the things that they were doing for the community at the time and just trying to educate the students, being a student themselves, was definitely interesting and unique.
So at what point did you become involved?
It was about 2 years after high school, probably 2008 or 2009.
And did you start with a reptile of your own at that time?
Not at that time. Actually, at that time, I wasn't even too familiar with reptiles. Doing a few educational programs with T.A.S.O.W. really kind of opened my eyes to the really cool world of reptiles.
Was there one particular kind of reptile that you thought you might want to have as a pet?
Well, I thought Jose from earlier, having a snake would be really cool. So handling him throughout various expos and educational programs really converted me.
Well, you were attracted to snakes. How'd your family feel about that?
My mother still can't stand snakes. My wife's okay with it, though.
What kind of a snake did you get?
We have a ball python.
And how big is that?
About 3.5 feet.
Is there something unusual about taking care of a python as compared with, let's say, a boa constrictor?
Not particularly. I think that, especially when they're young, it's relatively the same care.
What kind of food do you feed a python?
Well, much like Jose, just on a smaller scale, we feed Clyde, as we call him, frozen mice, so that they don't injure the pet.
Now, what is it about a pet python that attracts you? Why a pet boa constrictor or a python? As a pet, what do you do with that pet?
Well, as Alex had mentioned earlier, it is quite rewarding to watch them grow, and just handling them throughout the day is pretty interesting. They do have an innate sense of curiosity about the world that is just kind of fun to watch.
There are a number of volunteers in your organization, maybe 15 or 20, maybe even more than that. What attracts them, and what kind of people are they?
Well, I think that what we're doing as far as educating people and our mission moving forward is kind of enticing to younger people. We get a lot of biology majors, conservationists in general, outdoorsmen that kind of believe in our mission of rehabbing these animals and protecting our wildlife.
Do most of the members, the volunteers in your organization, have pets in their home, have some of these pet reptiles at home?
I suppose they do, yeah. And our foster network in general obviously runs off of our rescues. So most people that volunteer with our organization do have some sort of reptile in their home.
Now, I know there's an extensive outreach program. Where do you present programs?
All over the place. A lot of schools, Slippery Rock, Montauk, for instance, just in our local network. But we do expos and day camps. We go down as far as West Virginia, as well as Lake Cranberry.
Now, is there a real interest? I know when somebody takes rabbits into a school, everybody loves a rabbit. Does everybody love a snake or a iguana or a animal like that?
Not everybody, but we do find with the children that they're incredibly curious about, especially when we bring out Jose or Lucy. They're very curious about what's going on, and they can't wait to get their hands on them and hold them.
T.A.S.O.W. is an animal rescue organization dealing with reptiles mostly. What kind of situations did you run into, and what were you rescuing some of these reptiles from?
Well, one particular instance that we do come across quite often is neglect. Recently, we had a reticulated python that we rescued who was kept in a small enclosure for her size, way too small. She had developed an infection in her mouth, which led to necrosis, which led to her fangs falling out. She was covered in mites, so we took her in and took her to get proper vet care, and through a few months of rehab and getting her back to eating properly and coming up to weight, we were able to successfully adopt her.
Any other examples you might think of?
There are quite a few. Not all of them are cases of neglect. Sometimes it's just a matter of somebody can't take care of their animal anymore, so we take them in until we can find them a proper home.
Now, you've been involved with this for some years now. How long is this going to be going on? Are you going to continue with this kind of interest and this kind of outreach?
Oh yeah, we hope to keep it going for a very long time. Our long-term goal is to get a facility so that we can bring in more rescues. Right now, because we operate off of a foster network, our network's kind of tapped out. And so we're almost out of space. And because of which, we need to have a place to be able to bring more animals into.
And where would that be? Here in Slippery Rock?
Ideally, yes, it would be here in Slippery Rock or someplace close to where the majority of our volunteers are located.
Now let's talk about the metamorphosis of the organization. Talk about it from the time that you heard that your friend started the organization and when you got into the organization and how that developed and where do you think it's going from here?
Sure. Well, in high school, obviously I knew Alex and a few of our other members and the founding members pretty well. One of the founding members, he had passed away shortly after the founding of the organization. It was a few years. And being friends with him, and he was just such a big personality and really believed in the cause, really cemented a lot of us into becoming more involved with the organization. From there, it's been a fairly consistent core group of folks like myself and Alex and Travis who have kind of kept things going. But we've always had plenty of volunteers. From the time I joined, we had a handful till now we have multiple hands full, and people signing up every day to volunteer with us.
Are most of the people who are volunteers about the same age as you fellas are?
I would say that we range from 18 to upper 30s.
And what about some of the older people? I know that the older people are the parents of the volunteers. How do they feel about bringing some of those reptiles into the house?
Most families are very supportive. Again, they believe in what we're trying to do and the niche we're trying to fill.
Sometimes, I suppose, if you're a rescue organization, that means that those reptiles will go back into somebody's home or somewhere after they leave your care. How do you arrange for that?
Well, there's many ways. We have forms on our website. If you're interested in adopting an animal, we can definitely facilitate that. And a lot of times, if we have an animal that's due for adoption, we will take them with us to an educational program or an expo with us.
An expo, what does that consist of?
A lot of different organizations getting together. Some of them are breeders. Some of them are other educational organizations like ourselves. And the public come and get to hang out with us.
Now, the expo would be a place where people can pick up different kinds of animals as pets?
Absolutely. That is one of the things that they're there for, is to be able to get the animals that they're looking for, as well as it's a good place to learn about various reptiles.
Now, are the expos run by rescue organizations, or are there pet stores involved as well?
Not so much pet stores or run by rescue organizations. It's more of just the reptile community getting together in one place.
The reptile community, is that a large community here in Pennsylvania?
It is, in fact. It's a large community everywhere. It's something that most people don't consider, because most people are used to cats and dogs, but it is quite large.
Does that surprise you that there's that much of an interest in your interest?
I don't think so. I think that with any hobby, it's there's as many people into it as there can be.
There might be some people out there that suddenly are interested in maybe helping a little bit. How much time do they have to offer, and what role would they play in your organization?
Well, they can offer as much time as they can give. A lot of things that we have people do are educational programs, but even just coming over and helping cleaning enclosures is a big help to us. We all have busy lives, and any amount of time donated is definitely appreciated.
Do you get together as an organization just to talk things over sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. On a monthly basis, we try to get all of our volunteers together so that we can kind of go over the plans moving forward. And
Are you also involved with getting together with other organizations around the country?
Sometimes, not so much around the country, but in our local area, like Jennings Environmental Educational Center, we do work with them. There are some other smaller rescue groups that specialize in other types of animals that we are in contact with.
Well, to me, this seems like an unusual organization, an unusual operation, and unusual goals. It would seem to me also that schools all over this part of the country would be interested in having you folks bring reptiles into school to explain what they are and how they're taken care of.
Absolutely, and that is one of the primary things that we do are educational programs in schools. In fact, a lot of the time throughout the summer, we're booked almost every week with a school that we're doing a program in.
It's good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for what you're doing. T.A.S.O.W., an organization that takes care of exotic animals, an animal rescue organization. I'm Larry Berg. We'll see you next time on Faces and Places.